Waking up is hard to do, yet every 6 months, millions of Americans adjust their morning routine for daylight savings time. But not in Arizona. Why do you think it is that Arizona does not observe daylight savings time?
Why they don't observe it? I don't know. It's a pain.
I don't know. Probably because nobody wanted to bother with setting their clocks back.
I have no idea.
I really don't know the answer to that. I think we should.
There's no daylight saved.
Meteorologist Ed Phillips and climatologist Nancy Sullivan explain how daylight savings works.
In the spring, we move the clock forward, so instead of the sun rising at 5 a.m., for example, it will be rising at 6 a.m. So we've artificially moved our clock around the sun.
Certainly the amount of daylight does not change. I believe there are some people that think that. That doesn't change. It's just the benchmark, the clock that we're actually changing to make things more personally convenient.
In 1784, Benjamin Franklin introduced daylight savings time with a letter to the Journal of Paris. He noted the city could save money by conserving daylight.
An immense sum that the city of Paris might save every year by the economy of using sunshine instead of candles. I believe all who have common sense, as soon as they have learnt from this paper that it is daylight when the sun rises, will contrive to rise with him.
The United States did not officially adopt daylight savings time until more than a century after Franklin's letter.
It was originally done around 1918, I believe, was the first time, as a method of saving energy in wartime. The thought being that when we get to the summer season, we have more hours of daylight. If we can increase the number of hours of daylight after people get home from work, then when they go into all the activities that they might do in the evening, they wouldn't have to turn on lighting, so they could save energy by not having to turn on lights.
Arizonans like to manipulate the clock. During World War II alone, the state switched between daylight savings and standard time on 4 occasions.
Everything was production. You had to produce that war materiel. And they did it especially when there were a lot of women that were entering the workforce for the first time. And it made it to where at least one of the shifts they were able to go while it was daylight and come home when it was daylight. So that was one of the reasons for it.
The Arizona legislature permanently abandoned daylight savings time in 1967. Nancy Sullivan explains how standard time is better for our state.
So if we move the clock back and people are getting out of work at 5 o'clock, the sun is still relatively high, but we're at the peak heat part of the day. So people get home, they will immediately turn on all their air conditioning. They may do their laundry. They may do a bunch of things that use a lot of electricity at peak periods of the electric cycle, so that it will cost a lot more money to provide electricity for APS and SRP at those times of the day.
You know, we seem to be portrayed sometimes as this ne'er-do-well state that's rebellious. And if you actually look at when we stay on Mountain Standard Time, our clock time and our daylight are matched fairly well because we stay on Mountain Standard Time.
Time is relative, time is money. Daylight savings affects everyone, from bankers to farmers, differently.
People whose job is not dictated by an office saying you have to show up at 8 and leave at 5. The community that works outdoors, construction community, the landscapers, those people tend to already shift their hours. So moving to daylight savings time isn't going to make too much difference to them.
One of the issues that I have heard is the bigger the disparity between our time and the East Coast, it makes it more difficult for people, especially financial. The financial institutions are based on the Eastern time zone. That's just the way of the world. That's the way it works.
Sometimes I'm 2 hours behind the East Coast. Sometimes I'm 3 hours behind the East Coast. And it really doesn't make any difference.
I think the only effect it has on me personally is the fact that I work with other states. So having to rearrange like work schedules and conference calls and things, that's the only problem that I run into.
Personally, I think it's more convenient not having to worry about it. So it's kind of a bother when you live with daylight savings time. You're always having to think, Do I set it forward now or do I set it back now? Those kind of things. Messes up your VCR, messes up your clocks, messes up your computer. With just having one time all the time, you don't ever have to worry about that.
For now, Arizona remains the only state in the continental U.S. that does not observe daylight savings time.